You come out with a new system, you come out with a new way to think about things, you come out with new vehicles that you can use. And you're not only competing in the marketplace, you're also educating the marketplace. You're doing those two things in tandem. Take all of your assumptions on what you're building and how long it's going to take and how much time. Take all of those things and multiply them by 5. That's what I would recommend. So if you think it's going to cost X to get things stood up, it's going to cost you 5X. Philanthropist is this big, scary term, and what technology allows for is for anyone to be a philanthropist, because ultimately all philanthropy is doing the most with whatever you have. This has really gone from a check the box exercise to a really core strategic element of what companies are focusing on.
Welcome to the Plucky Bamboo Podcast, where we get into the real stories and strategies behind scaling sustainability-focused businesses. Today, I'm joined by Joe Phoenix, founder of Givinga, a fintech company that's reshaping how purpose and profit intersect inside large organizations. In this episode, we dig into some challenges every mission-led founder eventually hits. How to frame your impact offering so it actually drives engagement rather than just becoming another tick box, why most ESG strategies fall flat, and what younger generations are demanding instead, plus Joe's no BS take on delegation, hiring, and what happens when you become the bottleneck. If you're trying to scale something meaningful and do it without drowning in the details, this episode is packed with tips, tricks, and Joe's learnings. Let's get into it. Hi Joe, thank you very much for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what it was that inspired you to create Givinga?
Well, Chris, it's a pleasure to be on. Always enjoy doing these types of podcasts. And I think the answer to that, and I'll keep it brief, is I spent a majority of my career, first 25 years of my career in financial services. And it gave me a great platform to start thinking about ways that you could be more actively involved in incorporating financial assets into impactful endeavors. And 10 years or so ago, I decided that it was a good time for me to make a move. I was turning 50 and had been at the same firm for 25 years. And at that point, walked away from a pretty lucrative financial services career and endeavor, and then moved into this kind of crazy world of startup capitalism. And that's where I've been for the last 10 years.
Bit chaotic, isn't it?
Yeah, it is super chaotic, but it's fun chaos. It's fun to come to work every day. It's fun to be actively involved in kind of thinking through some of these big issues that we're dealing with and coming up with solutions that I think are going to be meaningful in the marketplace.
How has the company kind of evolved over the last 10 years since you started it then?
Well, I think that all startups evolve. And if there are people that are listening, they're thinking about starting a company, the first thing that I can tell you is prepare for that company to change kind of right before your eyes, and embrace that. Very rarely do you start with a fully baked end-to-end idea in these new companies. I think that it's very important to have a North Star that kind of guides you, that you stay very closely aligned with. Our North Star was really that we wanted to create an organization that gave people of all walks of life access and ability to make an impact. How we did that looks very different from kind of how we first started thinking about this. We have a donor advised fund platform that's kind of in the center of the organization. All of that has just kind of evolved to Givinga today, which is really a financial technology company that provides solutions to individuals, institutions, partners, and just allows them to give money to charitable causes and to things that are important to them in a much more easy and efficient way.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's not just the company that's changed over the past few years. The whole giving and ESG landscape itself has changed quite dramatically. What has been the biggest shift that you've seen so far, and how have you kind of pivoted the company around that?
Well, I think that technology being used in the space has really had probably the most significant impact of that space's ability to kind of grow and move into the next phase. I think that when you attach technology to things, you open markets, you make things more efficient, you give people access to tools and services that they haven't had access to before. And just by doing that, you kind of expand the footprint, you expand the ability to kind of get things moving and you expand the opportunity set against that thing that you're focusing on. So I think that having technology in the marketplace has really been kind of the driver of moving some of these kind of key things forward.
Has the technology made more of a difference for more the end user experience? Because the technology, I guess, is easier to use on the client side, do they use it more? Or is it more that now the technology has improved, it's improved your sort of marketing, messaging, sales side?
I think it's a little bit of all of that, really. I mean, technology, when used properly, enables users to do things that they haven't been able to do before. So think of any industry on the planet that you can attach the four critical letters of tech to. So whether it's health tech, biotech, you can just go right down ed tech,
Climate tech.
exact climate tech, right? Right. We coined a phrase called philantech, right? It's like doing the same thing with philanthropic vehicles that all these other industries are doing. And I think that when you attach tech, as I said, it opens markets. It introduces people to not only services and goods, but technologies that allow them to be more efficient, thoughtful, impactful with what they're doing. So I think the technology, if you think about philanthropy and giving, and you think about it kind of on a linear fashion, on the kind of left-hand side of that line are the people that are actually trying to give money to charity. On the right-hand side, far right-hand side of that line are the organizations that are actually trying to connect themselves to those people. And technology, if you sprinkle it in between that, it makes that giver better at taking that money and putting it to use, and it makes the receiver, the end charitable organization, better at collecting those assets. And hopefully in between, you provide people with the ability to really leverage all the things that are kind of at their disposal, whether it's social network, friends, organizations, companies, to really drive a more impactful kind of end to the process that they're involved with. So I think it kind of sprinkles across the entire spectrum.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because I feel like even just by using the phrase philantech, it positions it almost more as a software
Yeah.
SaaS kind of company as opposed to a philanthropic organization. And I guess that gives you such a good position in the market in terms of strategy because the messaging is so different.
Right. I mean, technology and philanthropy have just really that this whole industry has really just started over the last decade or so. And um, inserting technology into and aligning it with philanthropy allows more people to define as philanthropist. I mean, philanthropist is this big, scary term. And if you play word association with me on what a philanthropist is, you'll come up with, rich, exclusive, out of reach for most people. And what technology allows for is it allows for anyone to be a philanthropist because ultimately all philanthropy is doing the most with whatever you have, right? It isn't being super wealthy. It isn't having to wait to make an impact. It's maximizing the impact of whatever dollar that you have to give to whatever cause is important to you. And, technology just gives you the ability to be super smart about that, from understanding, what organizations are out there, to linking with people that are aligned with your mission, to linking with your organizations, your companies, to maximize the amount of impact that you can have. So technology, when it's related to what we're doing, or whether it's related to the sustainability side of the equation, just frees people up to be creative and provides efficiencies that really weren't there before you started plugging technology into some of these industries.
What's been the biggest challenge when it comes to the growth of Givinga? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Oh, I think running a startup's challenging. I mean, it's breathing every day, really. I mean, you come up with an idea, you think it's a great idea, and it's a great big world out there. People are distracted. So getting these new ideas out into the marketplace and getting the right kind of ears and eyes on the company is probably the biggest challenge. And it's just standing something up and then getting it to a point where it's actually kind of self-sustaining. But that's the nature of all of these businesses. And it's just, it's a challenge that you run through every day. And it's just, it's a matter of kind of taking one step after the other and continuing to grow that business and look for ways that that business can kind of fit into these kind of broader issues that we're looking at right now.
I'm assuming that a lot of corporations tend to label giving ESG as a nice to have. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, you're right. I call it check the box,
Right.
but same thing. You're absolutely right.
Have you come up with any strategies or tactics that have helped you fight against that?
Yeah, well, I think the marketplace is actually fighting that battle for us. I think that if you look at the history of charitable giving in the United States, I mean, companies and individuals begin giving money to charity for, over 100 years, hundreds of years, right? Companies up until maybe a decade or so ago were able to, kind of spool these things up, offer them to employees, say that they were active in the giving space, and then check that box. I think that what we're seeing happening over the last decade or so is that the corporation is being held to a different standard by these next generations that are coming through. It's not enough to just check the box and say that you're doing something on the charitable side. Employers, customers are asking companies to really provide evidence of what they're doing, to provide avenues where they can participate along with that company. How are they giving back? What are they involved with? So our view, corporate America is now really being asked to not check the box, but I think there's a broad consensus that a lot of these solutions that people are looking for are going to be aided in a significant way by, companies that are actively involved in that solution with them. So this has really gone from a check the box exercise to a really core strategic element of what companies are focusing on. I think that that shift is something that we don't think is a trend. We think that that is we think this fundamental shift in the way that companies are interacting with customers, interacting with employees, and we think that that's going to be a real driver for, some of the work that we're doing.
We can only hope.
Right.
I'm curious about digging into some of the detail then. So, say I guess with client acquisition, is that the biggest problem that you face? Is that the biggest challenge, or is there something else?
Well, I mean, client acquisition is always a challenge, right? I mean, it's always getting customers to rethink something that has been pretty much embedded in the way that they do things for the last, few decades is always a challenge. You come out with a new system, you come out with a new way to think about things, you come out with new vehicles that you can use. And you're not only competing in the marketplace, you're also educating the marketplace. You're doing those two things in tandem. So that is challenging. I mean, but that's kind of the fun part of this, which is to really be on the forefront of kind of rethinking what we consider to be a very important and significant part of what individuals and corporations are doing, and providing this kind of new avenue. But it does require pretty significant amount of education as you're kind of introducing that into the marketplace, which is always a challenge.
Again, I'm assuming that trust can be a pretty big hurdle in sort of the philanthropy space. What strategies have you found to sort of, I guess, build credibility with the partners that you have with your clients?
Well, the way you build trust is through transparency, in my opinion. And what technology provides is an absolute high level of transparency. And it's not only transparency in how the organization is being run, but it's transparency in how those assets are flowing from an organization or an individual to the charitable organization, what that charitable organization is doing with those assets, how those entities are communicating with one another. I think that if the industry has struggled with anything, it's been with a lack of transparency or the inability of donors to connect with that end charity or vice versa, and then see those dollars as they're transacting. So by providing kind of end-to-end, almost blockchain transparency around transactions, and then getting those entities to interact with each other, the the trust almost solves itself once you're doing that.
How do you approach building a team that isn't just in it for the passion of it, for the sake of it, but also has those strengths behind operations, maybe has that professionalized background?
That's an excellent question, actually, because it touches on a variety of components of what we're doing. You're combining for-profit with nonprofit, right? You are in the nonprofit world, but you have a for-profit company that is interacting with platforms and large corporate customers. And for-profit and nonprofit have really traditionally been oil and water. You're either one or the other. You're not really having a foot in both. And when you do that, coming back to that discussion we had on transparency, when you do that without transparency, it's a very interesting industry where when you start combining for profit with nonprofit, you're almost guilty until you prove yourself innocent. Why are you doing this, right? Why are you combining this for profit entity with the nonprofit? And my response is, well, if the for profit can make the nonprofit better, and if the for profit can increase the amount of dollars that are going to nonprofit just because for profits think about things differently than nonprofit, why wouldn't you do that? And I think that when it comes to hiring people, there is a balance that you have to take from, we are not running a nonprofit, right? We are running a for-profit company. So we have to hire people that, understand that this is a business and we're trying to solve a bunch of problems and figure out how to fit the organization into this kind of industry that we're in that's kind of rapidly changing before our eyes. But at the same time, we're also very interested in people that kind of look at the world the way that I do, which is, hey, you can build something and you can make money off of it, but is that really what your sole purpose is? And my sole purpose really isn't that. It's to build a company that adds value, that provides a legacy, that I can point to, a company that my kids understand, and appreciate. And, oh, by the way, it makes money on the side, but it is generating a significant impact in the marketplace that we're running in. So it's really finding a balance of those two things when you're out looking for people. And it's not cookie cutter. As I've said, I think the best organizations have employees in important positions that don't look anything like the CEO or the executive team. You have this kind of self-selected diversity that occurs within the organization with people that are coming at this from a variety of different angles and bringing different perspectives to it. And, my job is to try and blend all of that together so we have this cohesive team that's really focused on moving things forward within the context of, some of those higher elements that I was talking about earlier. So it's difficult, and you really do have to balance those two pieces together. But at the end of the day, we just look for the best people that share kind of our vision of what we think this company can become, and then we put them in positions that they can start to make an impact, and we step aside and let them do their jobs.
I think something ESG has suffered from for a while is that whole not blending enough of the for-profit into their business. And I think it's easy to see why, right? If you've got a really strong mission or vision that you want to achieve, and that is helping other people, serving other people, and you may feel that going for profit goes against that purpose. But I've always been of the opinion the biggest companies in the world shape the world. They shape culture, they shape the way that we interact with the world. So the more profit you have as a business, the more you can grow and the more impact you can have. So when it comes to that recruiting, that diversity of opinions, is there a specific way that you look for new talent? Is it in the interview process? How is it that you do that?
Well, I've been doing it for a long time, so I can't tell you how many people I've hired in my past career. So there's a little bit of kind of just there's an inherent nature to kind of how you do things. I'm looking for, when we sit down and talk to people, first question that I'm asking myself is, are they capable against the role that we're hiring for? I mean, that's kind of the first thing. It's like, okay, so if we're hiring you to run our marketing organization, are you a capable marketer? All right. So that's kind of box number one, right? And what's your experience there? And wow, what can you show us as to, effect that you've had in some of the roles that you've been in the past? I think the overarching piece is there's this other kind of part of it, which is people joining the company because they see the company as, yes, it's for profit, but it's really focused on this empowering impact across these various organizations. That gets people super excited, right? It's like I can kind of do both things. I can work for a company that is going to pay my salary, and it's a company that's also focused on some of these important kind of social initiatives that really haven't been figured out in the marketplace yet, that a variety of companies like ours are trying to kind of come up with solutions on. So there are puzzles that need to be solved, and we're really looking for that kind of combination of person that's coming in with one eye on that, but then the ability to really kind of dive into what's pretty complex business and help us kind of understand the best way to move the company forward. So it isn't a cookie cutter. It is a person by person sitting down, having a conversation, and just seeing whether that person's going to fit inside the culture that we've built here, and at the same time is going to be value added against the specific role that we're hiring for.
What's been the biggest leadership learning you've had while growing Givinga?
Wow, I've had a lot of leadership learnings. I think probably the biggest learning that I've had in running the company is the importance of hiring good people. I mean, we've been talking about this a lot, but especially in a small company like ours, or any small company, the driver of the company's culture is all the people who work at the company, right? So getting that right is the most important aspect of what we do. I think the second is, once you get that right, it is forcing yourself to step away and let the people that you've hired actually do their jobs. And by do their jobs is not just come in, punch the clock, 9 to 5, and then call it a day, but it's like letting people experiment, letting people fail, letting people push the envelope and learn from that. And I kind of sit above that and move things along and provide perspective where I can, but it's really finding the right people and then turning them loose and getting out of their way and letting them do their jobs. I can't tell you the number of people at this company that, have these super, super critical roles that are way better at that role than I'll ever be. And it's as quickly as you can understand that the key role to me, or the kind of the key facet that I follow, is just trying to hire people who are smarter than you, right? And then let them do their jobs and step out of the way. And, if you find yourself, one of my favorite sayings, I don't know where it came from, but, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. It is let people do their jobs, get out of the way, provide guidance and experience from the 40 plus years of experience that you have to offer, but then just let that company's culture develop around those people.
Would you have any advice for someone that is in the early stages of growth, where they've got a small team in place, but they feel apprehensive about delegating some of those more critical pieces to other people? So say, for example, stepping out of sales as a founder and putting a salesperson in place,
Yeah.
or something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a balance here, because I'm not a micromanager. I don't like to micromanage people. I just like to hire good people and step out of the way. But I think that I err when I make mistakes. I don't micromanage enough, meaning I think that there's a balance between keeping your finger on the pulse of what's going on, but not having to be involved in every single thing that is occurring at the company every hour of every day. So I do think that there's a point where you want to be absolutely involved and aware of everything that's going on, but then you also want to be confident enough in your people to step back and let them solve, assess, and move the company forward without having to ask for your approval on everything. It's a balance that's very, very difficult, especially, in my opinion, for founders and people in my role who have committed a lot, vested a lot of their time and their capital, and this their baby. To turn that over to other people and let them run with it can be scary, can be hard. But I haven't seen too many organizations where leadership has not done that have been successful. I think that organizations are only as good as the people that work for those organizations. And, the CEO, the leader of that company, is one of those people, but it's definitely a team effort, and you have to just realize that and find the best members of that team, then let them do their job.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, if you are the leader of a business, you've founded it, you are the CEO, whatever it might be, your time is much better spent on higher leverage tasks rather than
Right.
being down in the weeds of whatever it might be. Your job is to make decisions to move things forward,
Yeah, at
not
the end of the day, you have 24 hours, right?
yeah.
That's what your day entails, and you have to ask yourself, where is my personal time best spent, right? I may feel like my time is best spent in micromanaging some, aspect of the business, but I feel like this is all about efficiency and leverage. And, you've hired people to basically leverage, right? To allow that organization to grow while you go do the things that you're best at, which is, I'm sitting up top and I'm the guy who's thinking about the broader, larger picture pieces, right? And that's really what people want me to do. So I just think you find your spot and then make sure you have enough time to really do what you should be doing.
My final question for you, Joe, is if you had one piece of advice for another business leader in ESG or impact driven companies, what would it be?
I think my one piece of advice would be to take all of your assumptions on what you're building and what the company is and how long it's going to take and how much time, take all of those things and multiply them by 5. That's what I would recommend. So if you think it's going to cost X to get things stood up, it's going to cost you 5X. If you think it's going to cost Y in the amount of time, it's probably going to cost 5X times the amount that you think. I mean, it's been the one thing that I've learned over and over again. I started thinking about Givinga in 2015. The company was incorporated in 2017. It's 2025 right now. It's gone through, I mean, the journey is about as far from linear as you could possibly imagine. It goes sideways, backwards, goes back around on itself, kind of figures things. It is a commitment, and it's a commitment that you have to be prepared to take at a level that you may not be ready for yet, right? And almost everything that I've done, from the amount of time it took to get into the market, to get the product stood up, to get us positioned, to get the company to cash flow positive, all these things took a lot longer than I thought they would take. So I would just say budget accordingly and try and be as realistic with your set of expectations as you can.
Joe, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.